She was tied to a wooden cross in a dead wheat field, left to rot under the open sky. A lonely rancher stopped his horse and chose not to look away. What followed wasn't rescue alone, but two broken lives finding shelter in each other. Hey there, before we go further, where are you listening to this story from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments, and what time is it where you are? If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and subscribe for more quiet Western tales. Under a pale sky that hadn't seen rain in weeks, the wind carried nothing but dust and the smell of something long forgotten. In the middle of an empty wheat field, stalks long since cut and left barren, stood a figure tied to a wooden cross. Not a scarecrow, an Apache woman. Jack Harlan didn't believe in ghosts, but for a long second he thought he saw one. His horse slowed without being told, hooves crunching gently across the brittle stubble of the earth. Jack narrowed his eyes, brushing a rough hand against his brow as if clearing the lens of his memory. The shape was human, too still for a woman and too wrong for a doll. Her deerskin dress, sun-faded and torn at the hem, clung to her knees. Her arms had been tied outward with coarse rope. Her face was turned away, but he saw her legs bare and bruised, planted like she belonged to the land. He dismounted, boots hitting the dirt with the thud of decision. He approached slowly, not out of fear, but respect. Whatever this was, it wasn't new. The ropes had cut deep, blood had dried, yet something inside her still held. Then she turned her head just slightly. Her voice came hoarse as wind through dry grass. "You gonna finish what they started?" Jack didn't answer. His jaw clenched around silence, a language he knew better than words. He drew his knife, not quick like a thread, but careful and slow. She flinched anyway. "Don't untie me unless you mean it," she whispered. "I do." His voice was low, like a prayer forgotten but still spoken in faith. He cut the ropes with gentleness that didn't belong to a man his size. Each strand gave way with a snap. When her arms dropped, she didn't fall. She stood. That surprised him most of all. She blinked as if the world was too bright, even under a colorless sky. Her lips trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of having been seen. "I didn't cry," she said, "not once. You don't have to now either." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was thick with something else, something neither of them had asked for. He led her to his horse, and she didn't resist. She rode behind him, barely holding on. He could feel her breath against his back like the smallest, saddest kind of trust. Jack didn't ask where she came from. Some stories don't need to be dug up to be known. Her skin was sunburnt along the neckline of her Apache dress. Her moccasins were missing. Her palms were blistered, and her silence said more than any confession ever could. When they reached his cabin, he didn't say, "Make yourself at home." That would have been a lie. The place barely qualified as one. Just a sloped-roofed shelter tucked into a hollow with a wood stove that wheezed like it might give up any day. But he offered her water. He lit the stove, and when she looked too proud to ask for food, he left a biscuit on the table and walked away. She ate it when he wasn't looking. That night, she didn't sleep in his bed. She curled near the fire, arms crossed as if she were still tied. He didn't ask her name. He didn't offer his. Not yet. It wasn't time. In the morning, she was still there. Not vanished like a dream or a burden returned to the earth. She'd swept the ashes into a neat pile. That was her answer. On the third day, she spoke. "They tied me up because I said no." He was fixing the fence. He didn't stop hammering. To who? A man who smelled like whiskey and land. Jack didn't look at her, not yet. White settlers, 3 of them, thought it would teach the Apache a lesson. Did it? She gave a small laugh, only brought me a view of crows. He paused, held the hammer a little longer than needed. I'm cold, Nishoni. It fit her, strong and old like the desert wind. Nishoni stayed. She didn't ask if she could. She didn't have to. Some people, when they survive enough silence, just slide into the empty spaces where love used to live. Jack was no stranger to ghosts. His wife had died in childbirth 6 years ago. The child, too. He buried them on a hill that still grew wildflowers without asking. Since then, he lived with his dogs, his tools, and a grief so still it felt like furniture. But Nishoni was not grief. She was something else. When he passed her a fresh loaf, she made stew in return. When he left nails on the porch, she fixed the broken step. Their conversations came like rain in drought, rare, needed, and never enough. The town noticed. They always do. At the general store, Mrs. Clary asked too loud, "Is that the Apache woman living with you now, Harlan?" He didn't answer, just took his flour and left. Sheriff Tolan came by a week later, chewed his tobacco slow. "You sure you want that kind of woman around, Jack? Folks talk." Jack stared past him. "Folks talked when I buried my wife, too. Didn't make them right." The sheriff sighed. "Just saying, some fires you let burn, they catch your whole roof. She's not a fire. She's the smoke after." The sheriff left without another word. Inside, Nijoni sat mending his coat. Her hands paused when she heard the door. "You don't have to keep me," she said. "I can go. You don't owe me freedom. I just gave you a place to catch your breath." She blinked, then nodded. "Then maybe I'll stay a while longer." They didn't talk of love, but it hung between them like a warm blanket. Every act stitched another layer. One night, while mending his gloves, she asked, "Did you ever want children?" His throat tightened. "I had one briefly." She set the glove down. "I'd have been a terrible mother," she said. "That's what they told me. Whoever told you that never watched how gentle you are with broken things." She didn't speak after that, but the next morning she sang while cleaning the stovetop, just a low song in her own language, but it was the first music in that house since death last passed through it. Weeks later, the men came. They didn't knock. 3 of them on horseback, boots muddy, eyes sharp with cruelty worn like inheritance. Sheriff stood at a distance, arms folded, ready to look the other way. "We come for the woman," one said. "She's Apache, doesn't belong here." Jack stood on the porch, hat tilted low, rifle nowhere in sight. "No, she's not yours. She's not anyone's." Nijoni stepped out, her apron still wet from washing. She stood beside Jack, not behind. "You left me for dead," she said calmly. "You shamed me, tied me like an animal. What part of that was right?" "You ain't worth dirt," the oldest man spat. "Nobody would want you." Jack took a single step forward. His voice didn't rise, but the air around it thickened. "Then it's a good thing I've been living in dirt so long. I know gold when I see it." A beat passed. The men looked to the sheriff, but the lawman only shrugged. No crime in choosing kindness. They left without another word, dust in their wake. Not justice, but peace. That night, Jack carved her name into the porch beam next to his wife's. Nijoni didn't speak when she saw it. She just traced the letters with her finger like they were sacred. Later, by the fire, she placed her hand over his. "I thought I'd been turned into something no one could love," she whispered. "I think love is what you turned into." They didn't kiss, they didn't cry. They just leaned against each other like roots that had finally found soil soft enough to grow in. And we're at the end, friends. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments, where are you from and what time is it there right now?
Your likes, shares, and subscribes mean the world and help bring more stories like this. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, wherever you are, remember this. Sometimes the world won't come for you. Sometimes it ties you up, leaves you out, and waits for you to rot. But if you survive long enough, someone might ride by. Someone who's been just as broken, just as lost. And if you're lucky, they'll stop, not to save you, but to remind you that you were never just a scarecrow. You were always someone worth freeing.